Kamala Harris marks multiple firsts when she takes office as vice president. But Mo Rocca tells us about another vice president and another first.
Just 2 blocks away from the Kansas state capitol in Topeka, you'll find a stately brick home with 2 domes.
My mom loved the house. It's probably one of the prettiest houses in Topeka.
Nova and Don Cottrell purchased the local landmark in 1993.
It hadn't been well cared for. It needed a lot of work.
Although the couple was retired, says their daughter Patty Dannenberg, they spent the next 25 years painstakingly restoring the home's parquet flooring and gleaming chandeliers. And I love stained glass.
It has beautiful stained glass.
Eventually opening it to the public as a museum dedicated to the man who once lived there, Charles Curtis.
I don't think many people around really knew much about him or realized how remarkable he was.
Remarkable indeed. 92 years ago, Charles Curtis was inaugurated as America's first and only Native American vice president. Curtis was a member of the Kaw, also called Kansa Nation.
The Kaw people are the indigenous people of Kansas.
James Pepper Henry is CEO of the First Americans Museum, slated to open in September in Oklahoma City, and vice chairman of the Kaw Nation.
I would say 99% of everyone in this country does not realize the state of Kansas takes its name from our people, the Kaw people.
Charles Curtis was born in 1860 in what was then the Kansas Territory to a white father and an Indian mother. His mother died when he was just 3, and he was left in the care of his Indian grandmother.
He lived with the Kaw people on the reservation.
Pauline Sharp is a member of the Kaw Nation.
He learned how to ride horses. He could speak the language.
By 1873, the Kaw Nation, once millions of acres in area, had dwindled to little more than a burial plot, and the few hundred surviving members were being forcibly relocated south to what would become Oklahoma.
They walked to their new home in Indian Territory. Took them 17 days. People got sick. There was typhoid, even starvation.
13-year-old Charles expected to join the migration, but his Indian grandmother commanded the boy to stay in Topeka with his white grandmother and assimilate.
She wanted the best for him, and the best for him was to go live with his white family. And it turns out his grandmother was right.
Had he gone with her, would we be talking about him today?
We wouldn't know who Charles Curtis was had he gone with his native grandmother to Oklahoma. In fact, he may not have even have survived.
Instead, Curtis thrived. He became a successful lawyer and was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Do you think having to go between worlds sort of trained him for politics in a sense?
I think that's true. I think being a mixed-blooded person and in some ways being an ambassador between two worlds did prepare him for politics, American politics.
In the Senate, Curtis, a Republican, became a force, serving as majority leader. An advocate for women's rights, Curtis proposed the very first version of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Women have always had leadership roles within our tribe and been really the backbone and strength of our tribe.
I'm guessing that might have been a factor in clearly his belief on this issue.
Well, knowing my native grandmother, I know his native grandmother had a strong influence on him, and certainly mine did.
But for Native Americans, the legacy of the man known as Indian Charlie is decidedly mixed. Many of the assimilationist policies he backed had ultimately devastating effects on the lives of Indians, leading to the dissolution of tribal governments and the breakup of communal lands.
I think he believed he was doing the right thing. Had he been alive today, I think he would have understood that some of the things that he believed in at that time did have a significant negative impact on Native peoples.
In 1928, Curtis, running with Herbert Hoover, was elected the 31st Vice President of the United States. He was given little to do in the office.
I proclaim open the Olympic Games of Los Angeles.
Though he did preside over the opening of the 1932 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. But with the onset of the Great Depression, the ticket's bid for re-election went down in flames. After Curtis's death in 1936, his name quickly faded. As for his former home in Topeka, Don and Nova Cottrell died last year, months apart. The house is now for sale. Patty Dannenberg hopes that whoever buys the Curtis home will preserve it. What would be lost if the house weren't there?
I think a lot of history would be lost.
And as for the Kaw Nation, they've rebounded in number, and in 2002 purchased acreage for a memorial park in Kansas, a return to their ancestral land.
We danced on our own land in Kansas for the first time in 142 years.
How did that feel?
It felt wonderful to be back home.
How would you like Charles Curtis to be remembered?
That's a hard one. As the first Native American to make it that high in the United States government, that's a source of pride for us. And I want people to remember him, I think, in a good way.